Hello and welcome. This is Kyle, aka AlienTude, and today I'm going to be reviewing a HuaWei Unokubi Zukuri katana. I apologize for my poor pronunciation, both there and in the future. You may have briefly seen this katana in my unboxing video, where I gave my first impressions. Now I'm going into a deeper overview, both of the component parts and how the katana has treated me, as well as my cutting targets, since then. Before I go any further, my standard disclaimer. I'm a sword collecting enthusiast with no training in swordsmanship, blacksmithing, or history. I'm especially inexperienced with katanas. Most of my education about them has come courtesy of Matthew Jensen's YouTube channel, link below. This entire review will be of the specific katana I received. I can't speak as to whether it's representative of HuaWei's entire product line, as this is the only sword of their make that I've owned. Please keep this in mind during this review. These are my amateurish opinions about this specific sword only. With that out of the way, let's talk about HuaWei. They're a Chinese forge probably based in Longchuan, the hotspot of blacksmithing in China. Though they share the same name as the mobile phone manufacturer, there's no relation as far as I know. I bought this sword direct from HuaWei's website for $268 US, and that included shipping. That puts this sword firmly in the budget range. You can find functional katanas for even cheaper, but corners are going to be cut quite rapidly. When you're looking at buying a budget katana, the number of options available is overwhelming. eBay, Etsy, Swords of Northshire, Jaku, Sino Sword. I could probably go on for another 10 minutes just listing names of sellers. So how do you choose? In my opinion, the reputation of the brand is of vital importance. Sure, you can find a glitzy, anime-inspired katana for $130, but what's the construction like? Is it actually a functional sword? Are the koshirai cheap metal stamped out in a few seconds, and the entire katana slapped together with little to no attention paid to the detail? Chances are, for that low price, you're getting something mass-produced with no real quality control. HuaWei has a reputation for excellent value for their price. When visiting the Sword Buyer's Guide forums, their name consistently comes up when people ask for recommendations for budget katanas. The blades are highly regarded, and the koshirai are usually fairly unassuming. HuaWei seems to focus on making sure the blade is done right. I've also seen a lot of people recommend HuaWei for the blade alone, and then having it remounted with upgraded koshirai to make an excellent overall katana. I might be doing that with this sword, but I haven't quite decided yet. Anyway, that was a long-winded way of saying that from what I've gathered, HuaWei has an excellent reputation for correctly forged katanas at an affordable price. I ordered this katana at the beginning of the year, and other than an email confirmation, I heard nothing from them. After 6 weeks, I sent an email asking for an update and got a prompt reply that they were out of the standard saya for the blade. They gave me the option of picking from a few others, or waiting for the standard one. I picked a replacement, and they shipped the sword the next day. There was a bit of a scare, as the tracking number they provided showed it was delivered to Iowa, not California where I live. Luckily, it turns out they provided the wrong tracking number, and the sword arrived a few days later with no issues. One final note before diving in to look at the pieces of the katana. I was able to disassemble it without too much difficulty. The mikugi came out easily. Removing the ska did require more force than I would prefer, as the fit was very tight, but I was able to get it apart and back together far more easily than the Ronin Katana Tanto I reviewed a few weeks ago. Alright, the first part I'm going to look at is the kashira. This is a Higo style kashira, which I believe refers mostly to the rounded shape, and from my browsing, it seems to be the most common shape on production katanas. This one is made of blackened brass with a leaf design in the casting. The casting quality is pretty good, and I like the texture on the surface. Overall, I like the low-key design that's not overly flashy. This is something that is repeated throughout this katana. The fit of the kashira is good. There's no wiggle at all, and the transition from the ito to the kashira is nice and smooth. The ska's shape has some subtlety to it. It's not a straight, uniform thickness. It's thickest near the fuchi and has a gentle taper to it, which feels great. When I took the katana apart, I was glad to see the wood core is not cracked. And as you can see here, the lines are clean and the overall fit and finish is very well done. There's dyed black semigawa panels on the ska, and while these are clearly not high grade, there's some small variation in nodule size, and overall, it seems to be a fine quality. The ito is cotton rather than the traditional silk. HuaWei does offer plenty of katanas with silk ito, but they are generally more expensive. The wrap is very tight and well done. I can budget a little, but just barely. The knots alternate as they should, and the diamonds are quite consistent. HuaWei advertises that they use hishigami. These are little paper triangles placed under the ito to help the shaping and tightness, and it's not something you see in a lot of budget katanas. There are 2 mikugi rather than the traditional one. They seem to be made of decent quality bamboo, especially since I had to use a decent amount of force when removing them. One of them has dented some, but there's no splintering at all. The fuchi, like the kashra, is made of blackened brass and follows the same design themes. The casting quality looks a little more muddled here, but it's not bad. When I disassembled the katana, I found a small piece of stiff paper in the fuchi. I believe it is used to help everything fit together correctly and tightly. The transition from the ito to the fuchi is perfect, even after reassembly. There's no lip for my fingers to catch on. The 2 brass seppas are pretty standard fare for Chinese-made katanas, although it is nice not to see China stamped on them. The tsuba is iron and is pretty clearly cut or stamped out via machine. This is the first place where I see some corners cut. The edges of the tsuba, both around the rim and especially in the cutouts, are sharp and could use to be chamfered to reduce the possibility of the tsuba biting into the hand. I imagine this could be a problem when practicing iaito, but since I don't do that, that's just speculation on my part. I didn't notice any issues when cutting with the sword, but the potential for problems is there. I generally like the overall look and shape of the tsuba. I find myself gravitating to more simple designs rather than the flashy and bright ones you see on most budget katanas. That said, the tsuba is also very small. I feel like the diameter could be increased by a full inch, and it would look better and function as a guard better. The habaki is a simple brass one and looks to be of mass manufacture, but HuaWei seemed to do a good job selecting the specific pre-made one for this blade, as the fit is quite tight. It's polished to a brighter sheen than most habaki I see. You'll probably notice some scuff marks on it. The fit to the saya is a bit on the tight side, creating those scuffs quite quickly. Speaking of the saya, it's quite slender, giving it a much sleeker profile than most budget sayas I've seen. As I mentioned, this is not the standard saya for this blade. The standard has a cracked red and black look to it. I picked this one out of the several options HuaWei gave me because it duplicated the overall color scheme. The koiguchi has very clean lines and looks good. The kurigata is blended pretty nicely to the rest of the saya, although you can make out just a little bit of sloppiness to the lacquer. The cotton sakeo is tied nicely into a presentation knot. It seems to be of pretty standard quality, nothing special here. There's pretty much no rattle with the katana in the saya, which is nice, but as I said, the fit is a little on the tight side. It definitely requires more force to draw than I would prefer. Still, considering this isn't the standard saya for this blade, I'm pretty impressed with the fit. One of the things HuaWei is known for is well-done nakagos. Many budget katana manufacturers put little to no attention to this part of the blade, since the vast majority of their customers will never disassemble the katana, and hence never see the nakago. HuaWei takes the time to produce even file lines across the nakago, smooths out the holes for the mikugi, removes any burrs, and overall makes the nakago quite attractive. The bohi does continue into the nakago as it should, and the terminations here are very clean, even if they don't end up at the same place on both sides. This is an impressive fit and finish work on a sub $300 katana. Now it's time to look at the business end, the blade. This is a T10 Unokubi Zukuri katana that is differentially hardened. The hamon is real and quite prominent, enough so that I wonder if they use some etching solution to bring it out beyond polishing. It's an attractive hamon that accentuates the clean lines of the sword. The blade has a pretty deep sori, or curve, more than I had been expecting when I saw it on HuaWei's website. I like the overall look of it though, and that curve should aid its cutting power. The Unokubi Zukuri blade is somewhat uncommon, but it's been my favorite katana style I've used before this one. About halfway up the blade, the flat near the spine, the shinogi G I believe, thins considerably before thickening again to reinforce the tip. There's no yakote in this style of katana. The bohi travels that first half of the blade with very straight and clean lines. It terminates in a sharp triangular shape pretty cleanly, although on one side of the blade there's a bit of an errant grind mark. They end at roughly the same spot on both sides, but not exactly. The planes of the sword are nice and even, with very little, if any, rippling. Repeating a common theme, this shows a lot of attention to detail that many companies don't bother with. This also shows through in looking at the kisaki, or tip. Close-ups show how well formed it is. Many times when I get a close-up of the tip on a sword, even on higher priced ones, you can see unevenness in the shaping, but here it's nigh on perfect. The blade is polished to a bright mirror finish. It's an attractive look, but let me tell you, it made it really difficult to get good photographs. My camera did not know how to focus on it. HuaWei ships this sword very sharp. Before I get into cutting footage, please keep in mind that I'm a novice at using swords. I have no training, and I'm learning as I go. I generally try to focus more on control rather than speed or force. Any failed cuts you might see are more likely to be my fault than the blade's. That being said, there weren't many failed cuts here. The katana sliced through pool noodles with ease, producing clean cuts and almost never tearing. The one time it did tear and failed to cut all the way through, I can see my edge alignment wasn't correct, and I ended up rotating the blade while cutting. I love the handling of this sword. It feels light and agile, but still has good authority in the cut. I had no issues indexing the blade, and the ska is very comfortable. The sharp edges on the tsuba didn't bother me, and there were no hot spots digging into my hands anywhere. Cutting through water bottles was easy as well, and with my poor aim, I cut through a cap rather than the bottle on one of my cuts. The katana handled the cap with aplomb, cutting cleanly and not taking even the slightest scratch. So, bottom line, was the sword worth the price? I think not only is it worth the price, I'm frankly blown away by the attention to detail HuaWei put into this sword. The fit and finish is excellent, with the only real complaint I have being that the tsuba could use some more finish work. For less than $300 though, it's amazing that I don't have more complaints. This is an excellent sword for an excellent price. I like it enough that I probably am going to end up sending it over to Cottontail Customs to have some customizing done on it at some point. Okay, I think I've rambled enough. Thank you so much for watching. If you happen to enjoy the video, please hit the like button and consider subscribing to my channel. Until next time, Alien Toot out.